Have you ever noticed how an avoidant always seems to rule you? Like they silently govern the entire dynamic? No matter how much effort you put in, somehow the power always ends up in their hands. They withdraw, you reach out, they go quiet, you start explaining, they disappear, and suddenly you're the one trying to hold everything together. It's almost like they've learned how to control you without ever saying a single word. But here's the question: is that really love, or is it emotional strategy? Because for an avoidant, distance isn't rejection, it's control. Every time they pull away, they're not punishing you. They're testing how much space they can create while still keeping your heart tied to them. And unknowingly, every time you chase that space, you confirm their power. That's the invisible loop you get stuck in. Their silence leads. Your reaction follows. It's a psychological game that feeds their sense of safety while slowly draining yours. But what if you flipped the game board completely? What if the same silence they used to test you became your weapon of power? What if, instead of filling their distance, you mirrored it calmly, confidently, and without trying to fix anything? That's the Uno reverse moment. It's not about ghosting or pretending you don't care. It's about a complete emotional shift where your peace no longer depends on their attention. You stop explaining yourself. You stop chasing clarity, and you start living from a place of grounded detachment, where your energy is invested in your growth, not improving your worth. When that happens, the dynamic breaks. The avoidant suddenly feels the same emptiness they once made you feel, because for the first time, their distance doesn't create panic. It creates silence that reflects back to them. They finally see their own pattern. The withdrawal, the control, the emotional testing. All of it loses its meaning when you stop reacting. That's the power shift. That's when you're no longer playing their game. You're defining the rules. So today, in this video, we'll uncover exactly how to pull the biggest, reverse on an avoidant step by step, logically, emotionally, and psychologically, so you can reclaim your balance, your power, and your peace. One of the biggest secrets of an avoidant partner is their deep fear of emotional exposure. This fear acts as their instinctive defense mechanism. They want to protect themselves from vulnerability being exploited. When they withdraw, go quiet, or distance themselves emotionally, it's not necessarily about you or the relationship. It's their fear controlling their actions. This is the core of their game, and it's what often leaves their partner feeling anxious, confused, or powerless. But here's where your Uno reverse moment comes in. Once you understand that their withdrawal is driven by fear, you no longer have to react the way they expect. Instead of chasing, explaining, or trying to fill the emotional void they create, you maintain your calm, grounded presence. You shift your energy away from trying to control their reactions and redirect it into your own growth, stability, and peace. This subtle shift instantly changes the dynamic. Their psychological control over you loses its grip. Here's the strategy. Whenever they pull away, resist the urge to chase immediately. Avoidants often expect you to react to prove your attention, devotion, or love because it reinforces their sense of control. By staying calm and detached, you reflect their own game back to them. Suddenly, the anxiety and emptiness they're used to creating in you are absent. For the first time, they experience their own pattern mirrored silently, and it disrupts their sense of emotional dominance. This is the key. You're not ignoring them or playing hard to get. You're simply reclaiming your power by refusing to participate in their fear-driven loops. Their distance becomes an opportunity, not a trigger. You observe, you stay grounded, and you let your peace be non-negotiable. This quiet strength forces them to introspect, to see their own withdrawal, testing, and control for what it really is, a fear-based pattern, not a reflection of your worth. A practical example. Imagine they take a day or two to reply to your messages. Instead of panicking or over-explaining, you continue living your life fully. You don't try to fill the silence with messages or calls. That calm, composed energy communicates something powerful. Your stability doesn't depend on their attention. This is the exact Uno reverse effect. Their control, the tool they normally use to test you, now works in your favor. The first lesson here is simple but profound. Understanding their fear of emotional exposure is your first strategic advantage. Once you see that their behavior is fear-driven, not personal, you can choose how to respond, not out of panic, but from a place of quiet strength and emotional intelligence. By observing rather than reacting, by prioritizing your peace over proving yourself, you start shifting the balance of power. In essence, you're no longer just playing their game. You're rewriting the rules subtly and psychologically without saying a word. And this is where the true Uno reverse happens. Their fear-driven tactics stop controlling your emotions, and instead, their patterns reflect back to them, making them face their own behaviors for the first time. Another fundamental reason behind an avoidance behavior is their instinct to test safety before allowing true closeness. Avoidants are wired to protect themselves from emotional overwhelm. To them, intimacy isn't just a warm connection. It can feel like danger. Because of this, they instinctively create small tests to see if you can handle their distance, moods, or unpredictability before fully opening up. It's not that they don't care. It's that their internal radar is always checking if the emotional environment is safe enough to invest in. These tests can take subtle forms. Sometimes they withdraw for a short period, seemingly for no reason. Sometimes they stay quiet after a minor disagreement or subtly observe your reactions when they express vulnerability. They're watching to see whether you can maintain your own balance, whether you'll react with panic or whether you'll chase and overextend emotionally. Essentially, they are gauging if closeness will lead to safety or emotional harm. Now, here's where your Uno reverse strategy comes in. Instead of falling into the trap of reacting impulsively or over-explaining, you can use their testing behavior to your advantage. When you recognize that they're subtly testing you, you stop giving your energy to their games. You maintain calm, measured responses. You don't chase their attention aggressively, and you don't try to fix the distance they create. By holding your ground, you signal a level of emotional stability they can actually respect, and it quietly shifts the power dynamic. For example, if an avoidant suddenly becomes quiet or seems distant after a small disagreement, instead of panicking or sending multiple messages, you can respond once calmly, then focus on your life and priorities. This mirrors the kind of composure they're looking for without falling into anxiety-driven reactions. Their test, which is designed to measure your dependence or insecurity, now shows them your inner strength and self-possession, which they can't control. This is the subtle Uno reverse. Their method of checking you now reveals your emotional independence. Another key point is consistency. Avoidants pay attention to patterns over time. Each time you respond with grounded calm instead of reactive emotion, you teach them that distance does not equal panic or drama. You break the cycle of control they are accustomed to. In other words, instead of reacting to their every test, you let your presence and steadiness do the talking. Slowly, their need to constantly test diminishes because they recognize your emotional boundaries and self-reliance. The power shift here is subtle but profound. Their safety testing tactics, which normally create tension and uncertainty for you, now become a mirror reflecting your strength. You no longer exist in a loop of chasing, over-explaining, or panicking. You are setting the emotional tone of the relationship. This not only protects your peace, but also subtly forces the avoidant to confront their own patterns, seeing that distance and testing no longer manipulate your behavior. In short, understanding that avoidance tests safety before closeness gives you a roadmap to play the game differently. By staying calm, grounded, and consistent, you turn their testing into an opportunity to reclaim your emotional power. Instead of being manipulated by their fear-driven tactics, you reflect stability back to them, forcing them to see their own patterns while keeping your peace intact. That is the second Uno reverse. Using their own psychological strategies to strengthen your position in the relationship. Control through distance and how you can flip the power. One of the most defining tactics of an avoidant partner is their use of distance as a tool for control. For them, withdrawal isn't a punishment. It's a strategy. By creating emotional or physical distance, they gauge your reactions, test your attachment, and subtly keep the power dynamic tilted in their favor. Over time, this can leave their partner feeling like they are always the one chasing, explaining, or bridging gaps, while the avoidant maintains calm and authority. Understanding this dynamic is key because it reveals the psychological mechanism behind their behavior. Avoidants are not inherently unloving. Their strategy comes from an internal need to feel safe. Close emotional contact can trigger anxiety, vulnerability, or a fear of losing control. To manage these intense feelings, they retreat, often without explanation, making their partner feel responsible for restoring balance. The more you react, the more the cycle reinforces their sense of control. Here's where your Uno reverse strategy comes in. Instead of instinctively filling the distance they create, you can mirror their calm detachment while maintaining your own emotional stability. By refusing to react with panic, guilt, or excessive effort, you stop confirming their control. Their distance no longer triggers anxiety in you. Instead, it becomes a neutral or even empowering space. This subtle shift is where the power dynamic begins to change. You are no longer a player in their game, but someone who sets the rules of engagement. For example, if an avoidant pulls away for a few days, your natural reaction might be to text, call, or seek reassurance. Instead, a strategic response is to acknowledge their space without overcompensating and focus on your own priorities. Your calm, grounded approach demonstrates that your peace does not depend on their presence or attention. This creates a mirror effect. They now feel the emotional gap they once used to control you. And for the first time, it may generate curiosity, reflection, or even subtle appreciation for your independence. Consistency is crucial here. Avoidants test boundaries repeatedly, often in small, unpredictable ways. Each time you hold your ground without overreacting, you reinforce your emotional autonomy. You are teaching them through action, not words, that distance will no longer dictate your mood or choices. This undermines their habitual control while simultaneously increasing your own sense of empowerment. The beauty of this Uno reverse is in its subtlety. You are not playing games or manipulating them. You are simply responding from strength rather than fear. Avoidants thrive on testing emotional responses. But when your responses remain steady, confident, and self-contained, their strategy loses its effect. You are essentially using their own mechanism of control, distance, as a tool to maintain your peace and recalibrate the dynamic in your favor. In short, understanding that avoidants use distance as control gives you a clear roadmap to shift the balance. By mirroring their calm, prioritizing your own growth, and refusing to react out of fear, you turn their withdrawal into a neutral or even empowering force. Their game becomes your opportunity to reclaim power, and the relationship's emotional equilibrium begins to reflect your boundaries and strength. This is the third Uno reverse, taking their strategy and flipping it to protect your peace while subtly changing the rules. Another key reason behind an avoidance behavior is their deep need for emotional predictability. For avoidants, uncertainty can feel threatening because it triggers anxiety and a sense of vulnerability. They crave relationships where outcomes, moods, and reactions are predictable. Not because they don't care, but because emotional chaos is overwhelming for them. Any unexpected emotional intensity can make them pull away, creating a dynamic that feels confusing and stressful for their partner. Avoidants often create subtle tests or maintain distance to keep their environment safe and predictable. They may respond inconsistently, shift between closeness and withdrawal, or observe your reactions carefully. Their goal is not to harm you, but to gauge whether the emotional landscape will stay stable enough for them to engage without feeling unsafe. Unfortunately for the partner, this unpredictability often creates anxiety and the compulsion to chase or explain, which is exactly what reinforces the avoidant's comfort in controlling the dynamic. Here's where your Uno reverse strategy comes into play. Understanding that their behavior stems from a need for predictability allows you to approach the relationship differently. Instead of reacting emotionally to every shift or testing behavior, you maintain steady, consistent energy. Your calm, reliable presence signals that your own emotions are contained and balanced, which ironically gives them the sense of safety they crave. By being predictable in your stability rather than reactive in anxiety, you subtly flip the power dynamic. For instance, if an avoidant becomes distant after a disagreement or seems uncertain in their responses, your strategic move is not to chase or escalate. You can acknowledge their space, keep communication clear and calm, and focus on your own priorities. This demonstrates that your well-being and emotional regulation do not depend on their attention or approval. Over time, this consistency reassures them without compromising your independence, and it quietly teaches them that distance or unpredictability no longer manipulates your emotional state. Consistency is key. Avoidants often test the stability of their partners repeatedly. Each time you respond with calm composure, you reinforce your autonomy. You show that their unpredictability no longer triggers panic or overcompensation. In effect, their pattern of testing and withdrawal starts working in your favor, reflecting back your strength and setting the emotional tone of the relationship. The Uno reverse here is subtle but powerful. By meeting their need for emotional predictability through your own grounded consistency, you reclaim control over your peace and the dynamic itself. You are no longer reactive or manipulated. Instead, you become the stabilizing presence. This not only protects your mental and emotional energy, but also gently encourages the avoidant to engage in a healthier, more conscious way. In short, recognizing that avoidants crave emotional predictability gives you the tools to shift the relationship in your favor. By remaining calm, steady, and self-contained, you turn their behavior, which normally creates tension, into an opportunity to assert your boundaries and emotional power. Their tests and fluctuations lose their grip on you. And for the first time, the dynamic begins to reflect your stability and control. This is the fourth reverse, using their own needs to quietly flip the power and safeguard your peace. The fifth major reason behind an avoidant partner's behavior is their subconscious fear of abandonment. Even if they appear confident and self-sufficient, deep down they often carry an underlying anxiety about being left or emotionally rejected. This fear is rarely conscious. Instead, it shapes their actions in subtle ways. Distance, withdrawal, unpredictability, all designed consciously or unconsciously to protect themselves from potential hurt. Avoidants tend to preemptively withdraw or create space to feel in control of potential rejection. If they sense that intimacy might make them vulnerable, their instinct is to retreat first, ensuring they maintain a sense of emotional safety. This pattern can feel frustrating for their partners because it often seems like the avoidant is pushing them away, even while secretly fearing that the other person might leave. Their actions are a paradox. They crave closeness yet fear it at the same time. Here's where your Uno reverse strategy comes into play. Understanding that avoidance is often rooted in fear, not lack of care, allows you to respond strategically rather than emotionally. Instead of panicking, chasing, or over-explaining, you can maintain your calm, grounded presence. By being emotionally steady and non-reactive, you stop triggering their subconscious abandonment fears, while simultaneously reinforcing your own boundaries and independence. This is where the subtle power shift begins. For example, if an avoidant seems distant after a period of closeness, your strategic move is not to overwhelm them with attention or demand reassurance. Instead, you calmly respect their space, continue living your life fully, and maintain consistent, confident communication when appropriate. This approach mirrors the kind of emotional stability they subconsciously crave, while ensuring that your own peace remains intact. The fear of abandonment, which normally keeps them controlling the dynamic, now becomes a way for you to maintain balance without losing your own power. Consistency matters here as well. Avoidants often test whether partners will leave when distance occurs. Each time you respond with grounded calm and clear boundaries, you demonstrate that their withdrawal does not dictate your stability over time. This teaches them that closeness can exist without panic and that distance does not need to create chaos. By doing so, you are essentially turning their subconscious fear into a mechanism that works in your favor, giving you control over your emotional state and subtly encouraging them to reflect on their patterns. The Uno reverse effect here is profound. Their fear of abandonment, which normally triggers their controlling or distant behaviors, now serves as a mirror, showing them your strength, independence, and composure. You are no longer pulled into a reactive cycle. Instead, you are quietly redefining the rules of engagement. Their fear, rather than controlling you, now highlights your ability to remain centered, calm, and self-possessed. In short, understanding that avoidants operate under a subconscious fear of abandonment equips you with a strategic advantage. By staying grounded, respecting their space, and maintaining consistent boundaries, you reclaim your power while subtly flipping their dynamic. Their withdrawal and distance lose their manipulative effect, and for the first time, the relationship begins to reflect your emotional strength. This is the fifth Uno reverse, using their subconscious fears to reinforce your own calm, control, and peace. By now, it's clear that an avoidance behavior isn't random or personal. It's driven by fear of emotional exposure, fear of unpredictability, fear of abandonment. All of these shape the way they engage, withdraw, and test you. The key takeaway is that their distance or withdrawal is rarely about you. It's about their internal need to feel safe, protected, and in control. Once you truly understand this, you no longer have to react with frustration, guilt, or over-explanation. This understanding is empowering because it allows you to separate their patterns from your worth. You can hold compassion for their fears without letting those fears dictate your emotions. Instead of feeling pressured to chase, fix, or manage their behavior, you focus on your own balance. Your peace is no longer dependent on their consistency or attention. It comes from your own centeredness. The Uno reverse effect is strongest when you internalize this perspective. You no longer enter into their tests or games. You quietly set the tone by maintaining calm, clarity, and emotional boundaries. You allow the relationship to exist in a healthier dynamic, one where you are not constantly reacting to their fears, but engaging from strength. Remember, understanding their fear doesn't mean tolerating neglect or compromising your needs. It means observing with awareness, responding with wisdom, and maintaining your power. When you do this, their strategies, distance, testing, withdrawal, lose their ability to control you. Ultimately, the lesson is simple. Their fear is not your failure. By recognizing it and choosing your response consciously, you reclaim your peace, your confidence, and your emotional authority. You are no longer caught in their loops. Instead, you define the rhythm of the connection, turning their fear-driven patterns into a reflection of your strength. That is the true Uno reverse. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.